So the fight that everybody wants, Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, the unification bout in the heavyweight division, this fight could potentially ruin the UFC forever. Hear me out. You're welcome. Take a seat. Get comfy. Enjoy. So some news obviously came out about this matchup. We know the whole landscape of this right now. Jon Jones beats Ciryl Gane. Then Tom Aspinall becomes the interim champion, defends the interim belt before Jon Jones defends the undisputed title. But Jon Jones is still able to keep his belt. Then he fights Stipe, doesn't fight Tom Aspinall, who is the number one contender and, like I said, the interim champion. You're all caught up to date. We all know what's going on here. Now, more news has came out about this matchup right here, and I think we'll talk about this later on. Let's just hear what Joe Rogan's had to say about this matchup. So, Joe Rogan had a guest on. Don't know who this guy is, but let's take a listen.
Is he doing Poria or...
So, just quickly, that guy who said, is he doing Poria? I hope he gets hit on the side of the head with a Pereira left hook. Unblocked. I hope this guy gets cracked in the side of the head. What is this guy on about? Like, what? Who the fuck even is that guy's on about? He's literally created his fucking UFC custom fighter. He's trying to promote him on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Aspinall. Yeah.
I think it's
Don't try and blame the Aspinall, his boy.
They're trying to come to some sort of an agreement. The rumor is that he wants $30 million. The UFC's going to pay it. Hopefully. I hope they pay it.
I agree with him, though. Is he doing...
So there you heard it there, folks. Joe Rogan has said that Jon Jones is reportedly looking $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, that there doesn't seem that crazy. Like, when Jon Jones was saying he wants FU money, I was thinking, like, upwards of 50 million. 30 million for a fight this big, I don't think it's that out there for someone like Jon Jones. Yes, after all, Dana White, he is the greatest of all time. I mean, you cannot keep his pipe out of your mouth. So, like, pay the guy, pay him for this matchup. Like I've said time and time again, you pay Jon Jones this lump sum of money, say he goes in there and wins, he's the greatest. You've got like your own Michael Jordan pretty much of MMA. If he loses, you've got a rematch, which will be massive, even though the first fight will be massive. Dana White, in his own words, said this will be the biggest fight in UFC heavyweight history, which, to be honest, is not hard to beat. Well, Brock Lesnar had some big ones, but outside of that, not that hard to beat, to be honest. But anyway, it's the biggest fight right now in MMA. You will make your money back on that, I'm sure. And then if Tom Aspinall is successful in beating Jon Jones, you've got a future star who's just coming into his prime that you can make millions off. Like, could you imagine if they had, you know the way they have the Abu Dhabi cards and have like Islam or Hamza or whatever fighting there every year? Could you imagine if they brought Tom Aspinall to the UK in these big heavyweight matchups? Like, they would make so much money off him. I think they need to pay him. However, Dana White then pulled Joe Rogan back on his leash, and Joe Rogan had to come out and say this when talking about the matchup.
I had heard a rumor that Jon Jones wanted $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall. And I did hear that rumor. And I did hear that the UFC said yes, but it is not true. So Dana contacted me and said that rumor's bullshit. So I felt obligated to tell everybody that was a fake rumor. I don't even...
So Joe Rogan there has to come out and say that it was fake. The rumor that he heard was fake. Dana White phoned him and told him it's fake. Realistically, though, if you're Dana White, there has to be some truth in this, because why would Joe Rogan just spout shite on that fight in particular? Like, there was no need for him to bring that up. If he hadn't heard that from a reliable source, I doubt Joe Rogan would be bringing that stuff up. But anyway, if you're Dana White, you will be annoyed at Joe Rogan for saying that, because a lot of the response online has seemed to be like, 30 million actually isn't that bad, the UFC need to pay him, why are they not paying him that, etc. So in the negotiation phase, if Jon Jones is reading all this, he might think, well, actually I should be getting paid more, and then that fucks up the negotiation for this matchup. So I do think there are some truth to the 30 million price mark, but if you are the UFC, you will be annoyed at that, because that there gives Jon Jones more leverage, considering everybody online is saying it's a fair price, why the UFC not paying that, etc. So you can understand why Dana White would want Joe Rogan to come out and say that and try and do that, but the damage is already done, because everybody and their mother has literally been talking about Jon Jones wanting 30 million. Now, let's get on to why this fight right here could potentially ruin the UFC forever. So, as we all know, Jon Jones is wanting, say, 30 million, which I think he should get if he's going to fight this matchup. I think the UFC can pay him, should pay him. They have that money. But my issue with this is, if the UFC don't pay him, and apparently Dana White has said they said, I seen another thing online saying that Dana White has said they won't be paying that or whatever. Right, this is the issue with this matchup. So if the UFC don't do this themselves, and say the likes of Turki Al-Sheikh gets involved, right, which he will put the money up, put the funds up, and make this fight happen. We've seen it in the sport of boxing. However, this will create a major issue in the UFC, because if these top champions, top fighters know that, say for example, DDP beats Sean Strickland, right? Just use this as an example, and he knows Khamzat Chimaev's next, but doesn't want to fight him, right? Then he can go, well, I want extortionate money. I want the Saudis to get involved for me to fight Khamzat because I want FU money, because John Jones was able to request FU money and you've got the Saudis in to pay him. So if that makes sense what I'm saying, it'll ruin the UFC, where the big champions that maybe have to fight their number one contender, who stylistically is a nightmare matchup for them and they don't want to fight, then they can just do a John Jones and be like, I'm not fighting, you need to get the Saudis involved and all this stuff. And then that there's the problem with boxing. If I'm making sense here, I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough, but you know, like in boxing, Alexander Usyk, Tyson Fury was the no-brainer fight to make for years, 4 years. But because there's no real, like, not owner, but the UFC kind of own, they've got the best talent all contracted, where, you know, they will tell you when you're fighting, you've agreed to this contract, so that means you're fighting this guy next. Where in boxing, it's not really like that. Like I said, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, I don't know if I'm explaining this well, you can let me know. But Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk was the no-brainer matchup to make, but because of money. So then they got the Saudi Arabians involved, and that's how the fight got made, with big money. So what I'm saying is, if the UFC don't pay John Jones out of their own pocket and get the Saudis involved, then that will affect every other big fight, because then every other champion or every other big name will be like, I'm not fucking fighting for what my contract is. Get the Saudis involved. I want big money. I want FU money. And that there can really destroy the UFC, especially the model they have. You know, it's kind of like, if you're the champion, right, this is your number one contender, this is the contract that you've agreed on, so you signed 3 fights, this is the fight we're offering you, take it, unless you're injured or other circumstances, whatever it may be. The UFC have a good model right now, and you can see boxing are trying to do that, where I think if the UFC don't just pay up John Jones what he wants this time round and get another, say a Saudi, or the India's looking to get involved with the Logan Paul, Conor McGregor thing, or anybody, if they don't use their whole funds and they get them in, I think they can really be in trouble with their champions down the line for making these big fights, as in people will refuse to fight their number one contender and just ask for ridiculous money to fight them. Now obviously in the UFC can strip them and all, but then that's a bad look, because then it's like the Ngannou situation kind of at heavyweight, where he never lost the belt, so he's really the lineal champion. If I'm making sense, you can let me know in the comments below. I'm really trying to put my point across here, as in, if the UFC bring in other investors, I think it fucks them up in the future. So what I think needs to happen right now is Dana White and the UFC, you can pay John Jones $30 million if that's what he wants. Pay him the money, give us the fight that we all want to see. Do not bring in any other investments for this fight in particular. You know, if Riyadh want to, how would they even go about doing it? Maybe they want to sponsor the event, but the UFC are paying John Jones' wage with us. I don't know how they would do it. Personally, I would just keep Saudi Arabia, any other group, out of this matchup, and the UFC should just do what they've been doing for years. Pay John Jones the money. Do not bring in Turki Al-Sheikh or anybody else, because it will affect you down the line, in my opinion. I hope that has made sense. In my head it has. I don't know if I've been able to put it out there properly, but sure, you can let me know in the comments below. Let me know your opinions. Do we see this fight? I think we see it on International Fight Week. I really do believe that. I've been saying that for a while. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if we don't see this fight, I think it is on the UFC, because they have the fucking money. They have the money to put this fight on and pay John Jones what he actually deserves, to be honest. They have the money. So if this fight doesn't happen, it's on the UFC, because John Jones has openly admitted he will fight Tom Aspinall, but for a price. and a price that the UFC can't afford. So if this fight doesn't go ahead, it's the UFC's fault. But let me know your opinions. Do you think it goes ahead? I think it headlines International Fight Week, but you can let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you again in the next one.